I believe, are cousins. They belong under Fisher Newman, the Fisher family, the Fisher building, the Fisher body. So what Jeff said, the money issue isn't a real valid contention. They're very rich. And the Democrat Party with John Dingell hated to lose him so bad in his problem with his health. They created a weekend at Bernie's type thing, man. They was keeping him alive.
Well, you know, again, with that, you know, the Dingell's been there for 82 years, and on the average of those 82 years was a little over $1.5 million received to run their campaigns. That's a lot of payback. So what happens is, and this is where the swamp comes from, the Republican Party, who won't give me a nickel, the NRCC, the Michigan GOP, they don't fund this campaign, they don't give me any money, they just look at it as a bucket with 82 holes in it, and they ain't about to put any water in it. So this has been a long process of me and my wife. She's been gracious enough to not argue with me too much about spending money. So, but we've spent a good chunk of our retirement in the plans of trying to turn these tides, and through grassroots effort of hardworking individuals like yourself, to be honest and to be frugal with what comes in, be cautious of where that money goes and how it's spent. But yeah, that lobbyist money doesn't come without a check.
Right.
They owe that money, and the problem is with that money, which is well over $1 billion that's owed, if they disrupt that system, they can't pass the debt on. So even the Republicans that are tied to those lobbyist firms want to honor that debt and keep it going. So the only way to do it is to keep a Dingell in office or a Democrat in that seat. But I believe we can do it. Again, I received 100,000 votes in 2016, just shy of 100,000. First time a Republican's ever doing it. And again, I'm not a party politician. I'm a constitutionalist, so I don't care who, what, where, when. I'm going to hold. That's my job, is to hold whatever administration is there accountable to our Constitution. That's my role.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Tim, good to see you.
Hey, I just wanted to let you know that from the last election from 2016, we had a bunch of signs, and we saved you some money over at the Washtenaw County headquarters. John Taylor had us put a lot of the signs away. A lot of them were yours from 2016. I got a 2016 sign of yours in my front yard right now.
All right, great.
And so we're doing our part to try to save you some money there. And I just had a question about from the national level. Are you getting any money from the national GOP?
No, that's the NRCC, and the Michigan GOP really they pushed me off to the federal NRCC. They said, well, MIGOP is here for state candidates, not for federal candidates.
Right.
There's a whole other rules of engagements. The local parties, I mean, they'll give me the Dearborn gave me $200. I mean, $200 doesn't even really is gone in a day. I mean, it's just gone in a day. You know, cumulatively, I think we've received about $1,500, maybe $1,600 from all the subgroups that are out there. And I'm most appreciative of it, but certainly not enough to do what we would like to do or what really needs to be done in order to get me out in front of and get me the exposure we need.
Is there campaign finance laws that need to be changed so that you could, running for federal office, could get support?
Well,
I had the golf tournament
Yes.
that we do the second year now to raise money for candidates and statewide. But if there's any way to possibly change those rules,
it's on my hit list. You know, something that that we would, we need to change. We need to work on. And so yeah, I think we could either come up with a set allotment of expenditures for the different roles. So for instance, if you're running for state rep, you can't spend any more than $40,000. If you're running for state senate, you can't spend any more than $60,000. If you're running for U.S. Congress, whether it's the House or the Senate, again, a set, and I think $200,000 would be more than what you would need to actually do what has to be done, because I do it all on $50,000 and $60,000. So I know that can
John
be done.
James isn't getting anything either from Ron Weiser?
Well, I don't know this. I will tell you this much. Ron Weiser supposedly told me he raised $40 million, and the NRCC told me that they raised $248 million, but for some reason they don't have any money for me. So I'm just set in a priority list, and again, this is looked at as an area, a bucket with 82 holes in it, and if they would just realize that all we got to do is buy a liner, and we put a liner in it, we carry water. We got the container, right? So who cares if it's got 82 holes in it? let's do what we have to do to move forward with what we can, but they don't think that way. And the Democratic Party thinks completely different. Believe it or not, again, 35% of those votes that I received were from Democrats and independents. Not because I compromised on my issues, it's just that there's a lot of people that are still conservative Democrats. There's a lot of independents out there that are sick and tired of what they're seeing and how money gets spent and the processing of things. So we can change this, and I believe that I hope to be the answer. I think that with, again, 11 kids and 14 grandkids, this is my neighborhood for a long time coming.
On the committee that I'm on, we have all the dinners, we have the golf tournament, we have all this other stuff. Joe's on it too. But, they need to change that because we're out busting our butt for the candidates.
And you're on the committee that needs to get the change, because what Jeff said is the state isn't supporting him. And I'll tell you right now, I know firsthand, I'm not going to mention names, that the Republican Party, pretty high up, you may know my association with some high up Republican parties, and I'm not going to mention their names. They're comfortable with Debbie Dingell.
Yeah, again, that's part of the swamp, and this is the problem that we've had to attack, and someone needs to say something about it again. But they'll give some money to John James, but they're not happy to give a lot of money to John James. They want him to win, but they're going to expect it to come from other sources. So I don't know where that $40 million goes, but I know this year I'm going to ask to see the ledger sheet. So I want to know where that $40 million went that Ron supposedly raised, and I don't know what the process. But for giving an example, they would not release any money until after primary. I didn't have a primary, right? So I was going to be on the ballot no matter what. They could have released funds, whatever. Well, believe it or not, there's still organizations that told me back in mid-September that they voted for me for $400 or whatever. I've not received it yet. I don't know where it's at. I keep calling. They said check with the post office, right? I mean, well, thank you very much. But this is, again, so to receive $500 in the mid of October, great. I get to pay one of my credit card bills for my gas expenses.
Maybe we should have you at our events committee meeting to discuss this with John Taylor, because every district in the state they need to give you money. They need to support you.
Well,
they need to support John James.
Thank
they
you,
need to
Tim.
Support everybody.
I really believe this is what we've tried to do through social media, is take this to a national level, and we are getting some support. I ran across some old friends from Texas. They just sent me some money. I mean, other things like this are happening in pockets. And again, I'm on 80 different subgroups on Facebook, and we post all those things as often as we can to try to get one person to kick in. And back in 2016, when the 2016 campaign was over, we started right away, and all we were asking for was people to commit $12, $1 a month. We believe that there was 1 million people out there that could have done it and funded the campaign. So, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, coming up.
So you mentioned social media. Where would we go to? Where do we go to share your page? Is it
the best thing to do is easiest thing is to go to www.jeffjones4congress.com. That's my webpage. If you go to my webpage, all my social media outlets are there. Otherwise, they're all underneath the same name. So you go to Facebook, Jeff Jones, 4 Congress, and if you go to Facebook, type it in, it'll come up. You can friend me, follow me. If you want to be part of our team, which we're always looking for, someone who's going to put a sign in their front yard, someone wants to know about upcoming events, then we have a secret page. You can't share from that because that's proprietary information that we share on that, where I'm going to be, when, and so forth. But if you do go to my webpage, you'll get a lot of updates on, I'm going to be here tonight at 9 o'clock, stuff like that. Now, Ann Arbor at 5, Wyandotte at 9, and so forth like that. So hopefully you can find it.
and which one do you want us to share? Like all of it, or?
If you just go through either once a week or once a day and go in there and find a post, because I post 3-4 times a day, and we make one video a week and we make one blog a week. And these are rules of engagement that we find. Our blog is only 300 words. That's the magic number to get people to read it. Our videos are generally less than 1 minute. The magic number we try to shoot for is 30 seconds. After 17, 18, 20 seconds, most people don't watch the video anymore. It's too long, gone too fast. So we just give bits and pieces, but once you see it, you can click on it, and all those videos and all the full blogs are on my webpage. You can say, I want to know more about this guy, Jeff Jones, and then you can go watch a 17-minute video if you want to. That's something to do when you're in the bathroom or something.
Jeff Jones for Congress.
Jeff Jones, 4 Congress.
Okay,
Thank you.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe, good to see you.
Yeah. Every second Wednesday of the month, we have our UAW retirees meeting. And I happen to know a couple of members that voted for Trump, and there were probably a whole lot more that voted for him, just didn't want to talk about it. And I missed last month's meeting, so I haven't been able to confirm this yet, but I'm speculating that this Wednesday, second Wednesday of the month, they may have a candidate meet and greet.
Oh,
Which, I would also speculate that Debbie Dingle's gonna be there.
I would
Would
think
you
so.
be interested in appearing and giving your pitch?
I will go anywhere, anytime for anybody. How's that, okay? My name's Jimmy, I'll take all you give me. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. I will tell you this, that Wednesday night, even though when I started running in 2016, I do pastor a church, and knowing that I would be gone 26 weeks out of the year, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I turned my Wednesday night studies over to my wife, who's been doing an amazing job teaching. So I do my best never to miss that, and so I'm always there at the church on Wednesdays. I schedule my whole day there just for that purpose. Take care of as much as I can while I'm on the properties, and then Wednesday night. So depending on what time of the day it is. If it's not at night, I'd be more than happy to be there.
Oh, it's, well, our meetings start at 10 o'clock.
That's great.
So,
Just in
and-
time for bacon and eggs.
And I mean, you could say maybe it's kind of like you're stepping into the lion's den, but just like Trump did, where he went to the inner city communities and engaged them and told, what have the Democrats done for you guys?
Right.
You could do the same thing, and I think you'd get probably a lot more support than you.
Well, I think that I know this, that the USMCA is probably the best revision of NAFTA. I think NAFTA was the worst thing that ever happened to the 12th district
Exactly.
ever. And most people don't realize that even though it was pushed through by a different president, it was basically written under what was called the Transatlantic Network Policy by John Dingell. But he didn't want. He had to show that he voted no for it. So he voted no, so that everybody else could vote yes. Again, the cover up and the smoke screens are there all the time as long as you do the due diligence.
If the UAW can come out and at least give Trump the credit for getting rid of NAFTA,
Yeah,
I don't know what they're good for anymore.
absolutely,
You
absolutely, yeah. So
They're not good.
Can I say something about that NAFTA thing? You may be able to use this. I think I'm okay without the mic. I think. Bill Clinton became president, and one of the big reasons was that George Bush Sr., if he had won a second term, he would not have been able to get the controlling party, which was Democrats in the Senate, to ratify an agreement. This wasn't a treaty. This was an agreement. It had to have a simple, not a super 60%,
right.
just had to have a 51% majority. And George Bush Daddy could not have gotten that done. And I often accuse Ross Perot of having manipulated Bill Clinton getting in office, because as much as Ross Perot complained about it, you look at the history of it, he benefited most. He's the one that mostly benefited by NAFTA.
Yeah.
Dennis, it was my understanding that the Republicans in Congress wanted NAFTA.
They couldn't, but they did, but they didn't have majority.
Well,
And Bill pardon me, Jim. George Bush Daddy couldn't have gotten the votes from the Democrats to get a majority approval of NAFTA. You're right about that.
But Bill,
Because the Democrats had the majority in the Senate. Bill Clinton not only got the Republican votes that everyone would vote for it because they were for it, but he got the Democrats to come along to get a majority vote.
oh, I see what you're saying.
And if you remember correctly, we were told that, and I remember John Dingell trying to sell this to us, that there were parts in Canada that couldn't get across the bridge so that we couldn't help our American auto workers. And that was how we were sold NAFTA here. And it was an absolute lie. It had nothing to do with really parts in Canada. It had everything to do with moving business outside of the United States to expand the auto industry. Which again, the rest of the world, in fact, the Heritage Foundation did some analysis and shows how much global economy grew because of NAFTA and so forth, but it destroyed us, in citizens. So we paid the sacrifice.
And to that point, folks don't realize how Canada benefited from NAFTA. And it wasn't just from Canadian parts coming here because God bless his soul and his remembrance, Professor Kaufman would tell us about how China would be able, through GATT, to send parts to Canada, and they would wave their magic wand, and those became NAFTA approved parts that could come to America under the NAFTA agreement from China.
Yeah, again, there's so many things that are tied to that. You know, Debbie Dingle will say that she was against the TPP. The problem was is she opened up free trade to 13 sub-Saharan countries, and then they opened up also some Southeast Asia trade that actually was done, the agreement was made like back in the early 70s, but it gave them an atmosphere. They couldn't do anything until it was funded. So the TPA, or the TPP was declined by everybody across the board, Republicans and Democrats. But she voted yes to the TPA, which was the funding of the TPP. You couldn't do anything until the money was set aside. So once the money got set aside, now they could go to Southeast Asia and do some trade there, as well as open those sub-Saharan countries up for trading. And these are the things that you know, the news ain't gonna talk about because it's exposing, just follow the money, and everything shows itself pretty simply. You know, so again, there's a lot more to it. I certainly don't have time to talk about it tonight, even though Dennis will give me to 2 o'clock in the morning. I can tell my wife would love.
I have a marriage
it's been a long.
He can speak till 2 o'clock this morning.
Yeah, it's been a long day. But again, just to give you an understanding, the Silk Trail needs to get rebuilt, and it's profit for everybody. So everybody wants to do it. And most people don't understand that's building a rail system that goes from China to London. And that will be rebuilt, and that's why we have soldiers in Afghan still, because it's the crossover point where they're going to meet. So we've got to hold an economic stronghold there, and we can't do it without a presence. And we don't want Russia there, because Russia then will interrupt that flow of trade that's going back. We keep China alive. China couldn't do anything without the United States, but we abuse that trade union for the purpose, and this is what Trump's trying to stop, is the imbalance of those trades. Right. Again, it's all, if we have a good moving economy, we can take care of a lot of disparity in community. We can fix education. We can fix other things. And it's not about giving money away. It's people don't realize. And I was hearing these socialists and communists talk tonight. They were literally saying we are going to steal from the rich and give to the poor. And my question is this: is what's rich? You know, who's rich? You know, at what point is rich called rich? You know, because is it 40,000? Is it 25,000? Because I have a feeling they don't realize that everybody that makes less than 25,000 a year really doesn't even get taxed anymore.
Well, I got to tell you,
crazy
Obamacare accomplishes that because as in my retirement, I'm having, you folks will know this, I'm having to pay upwards of $2,500 a year, not only co-pays but deductibles, and you know, so that has increased because Jeff, you cited all of that, the cost increase, but they consider me rich, and anybody who really knows me knows I'm not rich, but the person who comes here illegally, or the person who will not work but has man on the land status because his foot is on American soil, gets that free. Yeah. So they are robbing from the rich and giving to the poor.
Here's the greatest robbery, more than the rich. It's just our Congress that stole Social Security. We're talking about $3 trillion have been stolen from you by Congress, misappropriated because they're not responsible to balance a checkbook or run a budget. These are ignorant, selfish people that are there for one purpose, and that's to build their legacy, and it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
Well, I will get on the phone with our UAW retirees president, Sterling Mullins, to verify that if there's going to be a candidate meet and greet, and then I'll let him know that
I should be invited. I really don't like to go places I'm not invited. I'm not looking to provoke anything. I'm more than happy to go anywhere. It's not that I'm afraid. It's just not ethical. I think that I'd rather do business ethically, and they don't want to. I mean, Dennis was mentioning people with payoffs. In New York, they used to call this VIG. Did you pay your VIG? If you paid your VIG, your store stayed open. If you didn't pay your VIG, guess what happened? Your store got burned. And it's the same people that became the Democrats of today. It's a bullying organization run by gangsters for the sole purpose of, did you pay your VIG? So
officially, the UAW has always maintained that they're impartial, you know, and that's,
yeah, right.
You know, but I did hear.
Ask Rory Gamble how many times that he had the opportunity to invite me, you know, for a political interview and rejected it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I did hear that the UAW had actually recently endorsed some judge that was considered on the conservative side, so maybe there's hope yet.
Yeah, you gotta find out who her cousin is, or his cousin, or whatever. That's how that happens, so. That's how Vig gets spread. So,
I'll talk to Sterling,
Yeah,
see where he's
I'm happy
coming
to be
from, and so they know that you'll be there
I would be happy to.
if you know, everything's okay.
Yeah,
So,
thanks, Joe, appreciate
all
it.
right.
Okay, Tim, you got another question?
I have another question. This is a good one.
Okay.
It is, because yesterday I was listening to Theron X. Theron had a shout out to the Willow Run Tea Party yesterday on a show, and he talked about Professor Kaufman and China-threat.com. He also talked about a brand new letter demanding from 7 members of the United States Congress, demanding that our university presidents come forward with the espionage that's coming, with this Chinese company called Yu, that has infiltrated all our major universities. Theron mentioned Mary Sue Coleman and President Schlessel at the University of Michigan. They're one of the top ones, where we have Chinese students that are communist, members of the Communist Party, that have come over here. And they are stealing everything. And what I'm wondering is,
What's your
you
question?
can talk about that, and once you get elected and beat Debbie Dingle, will you sign on to that letter? And it'll be my son, who just graduated this past week at Fort Leonard Wood. He's going to Fort Stewart for 3 years.
Well, God bless him.
That will be that he may end up going over to Afghanistan.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, certainly, again, this is part of John Dewey's plan years ago, back in the early 1900s. He said, I will make America a communist country, give me 75 years, and to the day it almost worked. It was what was called the Long March. When you hear the Democrats mention the term the Long March, this is what Deweyism was all about. And eventually, little by little, the best way to make America communist is to teach another generation to be communist. And we've come along with ideal, people don't understand the ugliness of the story of Robin Hood. I mean, it is a communist story. Steal from the rich, give to the poor. Now, don't get me wrong. The aristocracy has problems and so forth, but that 2 wrongs never make a right. That's all I can tell you, all right? And the love of money is the root of all evil. So if you want to follow it, just follow the money. You'll see the story. Debbie Dingle, and I don't know if we're going to bring it out about it or not yet, but there was an industrial plant that gave Debbie Dingle $127,000. Prior to that, that company had violated almost every EPA and DEQ law that was out there. What happened is then all of a sudden they donate this $100 and some odd thousand to Debbie Dingle's campaign. They get what was called a Clean Corporate Citizen Award, which means now they don't have to run information on what's coming out of the stack. It's a speed pass from the DEQ. May not seem like a lot, but there's one agency that Debbie serves on in Washington, and no one ever talks about it. It is a department set up for the DEQ's funding possibilities of how they get their funding. And what comes across her desk, and what came across her desk before anybody else knew about it, was the Flint water crisis, because her job in that commission is to determine what are the qualities of our water that goes through nationally. So they saw the numbers. They saw what would happen if you change the salination possibility. Now, I can't tell you they understood what they saw, but they saw the numbers, and no one has brought it out. So she's guilty to the core of Flint. She's guilty to the floor of polluting Dearborn, and she does so based on the money that's given to her. So, but I'm getting some signals from Mrs. Jones. So one last question. How's that?
There's no more questions.
She wants me to eat. She wants me to eat.
Are we allowed to
We're gonna
give
keep
you
up
any
this-
money?
You can give me a minute. If you want to write a check, make it out to Vote Jeff Jones Committee.
Is there a cash limit?
I cannot receive more than $20 in cash from you, so that's the
You give
limit.
it to me.
But you can give my wife all you want.
Give you plenty of earth wine.
Yeah, so, yeah, just teasing. But again, sponsor a sign, whatever you can do, but again, get the word out. I appreciate your prayers. Thank you for this opportunity, Dennis, Mike, thank you so much. God bless you, Willow Run Tea Party. It is people like you that are the core of America that will preserve our Constitution to another generation. If it comes down to it, we'll stand and fight. God bless you.
All right.
Amen.